Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to the 1957 California Pacoima mid-air collision. Now, I would have thought because of air traffic control, there's no way two planes would, be so close to each other that they could literally head-on collide. But it happened, and 1957 is quite some time ago. Perhaps the air traffic control systems and software were not, they definitely weren't as good as what we have now. Maybe they weren't as sophisticated. So I'm really eager to hear the story behind this. So let's do it.
On February 3rd, 1959, a small Beechcraft 35 airplane, a charter plane with a pilot and 3 passengers, took off from Mason City Airport in Mason City, Iowa, headed for Hector Airport in Fargo, North Dakota. The plane didn't make it 6 miles before it crashed into a frozen field, killing everybody on board.
Oh my God.
Pretty much every American who was alive at the time remembers that accident, and those who weren't yet alive still probably remember it because of the 1971 song by Don McLean that eulogized the loss of innocence that came on the day the music died. But the plane crash that killed music stars Buddy Holly, J.P. Richardson, and Ritchie Valens has a unique connection.
Oh, so 3 well-known musicians were on that plane. I see.
To another airplane accident that is not nearly as well remembered. Ritchie Valens, just 17 years old when he died in that airplane crash, was reportedly afraid of flying. Afraid of flying because of another accident that had terrified him just 2 years earlier.
How tragic.
The victims of the 1957 Pacoima mid-air collision deserve to be remembered. At 10:15 a.m. on January 31st, 1957, a Douglas DC-7B took off from Santa Monica Airport. The Douglas DC-6 had originally been intended as a military transport towards the end of the Second World War. It was itself a development of the Douglas DC-3, flown by the military as the C-47 Skytrain, one of the most well-recognized transports of the Second World War. After the war, Douglas developed the DC-6 design for commercial travel, intended to compete with the Lockheed Constellation in the long-range commercial transportation market. The plane had been highly successful, used by
Was Boeing not around at that time?
multiple airlines and the military, with over 700 built. But C.R. Smith, the president of American Airlines, wanted a faster plane, one that could fly across the United States in about 8 hours. Commercial airliners of the day could not reliably fly non-stop routes east to west because they were flying against the prevailing winds, and the average flight time across country was some 15 hours.
Wow.
The Douglas company was reticent to invest in the development costs, not convinced there was a big enough market for such a plane, until American made a firm order for 25 planes. The prototype first flew in May of 1953, and Douglas delivered the first DC-7 to American Airlines in November. In its time, it was the fastest transport aircraft in service, with a cruising speed of 360 miles per hour. The DC-7 was one of the last major piston-driven passenger aircraft designs. Its eventual replacement, the DC-8, used jet engines. In 1955, Douglas came out with the DC-7B model, which carried more fuel.
Isn't it interesting how passenger planes, have looked pretty much the same all the way back since then, like long fuselage, wings going outward. I wonder when the next innovation is going to be.
The plane that took off that January morning in 1957 was a brand new DC-7B, manufactured at the Douglas Aircraft Company plant in Santa Monica, California. It was on its first operational flight and was earmarked for Continental Airlines. The plane was undergoing routine testing and was crewed by Douglas employees. The testing was required by civil air regulations in order to issue an airworthiness certificate for the plane. 36-year-old William Carr was the pilot, with veteran co-pilot Archie Twitchell. In addition, the crew included a radio operator and a flight engineer. While the tests were expected to take only about 2.5 hours, the plane was loaded with 6 hours worth of fuel. The plane was performing its tests in clear skies at 25,000 feet over California's San Fernando Valley. The same morning, 2 F-89J Scorpion fighter jets took off from a Northrop corporate facility in Palmdale, California. The F-89 had been developed from a 1946 U.S. Army Air Force's specification for an all-weather night fighter. Designed to intercept and destroy enemy aircraft by day or night under all types of weather conditions, the plane had 2 crew, a pilot and a radio man, seated in tandem. The nickname Scorpion had been coined by Northrop employees, referring to the appearance of the slim rear fuselage and the high-mounted tail, and the nickname had been retained by the Air Force. The first production versions of the aircraft were delivered in September of 1950. While a jet aircraft that was fast in its day, it was subsonic, with a maximum speed of 635 miles per hour.
I mean, for the time, still pretty good.
In 1957, the Air Force had Northrop start converting 350 F-89D models to the F-89J, which was specifically designed to carry the MB-1 air-to-air nuclear rocket designed to destroy entire enemy bomber formations. The two F-89Js taking off from Palmdale were newly converted and had been overhauled, a process called inspection and repair as necessary. The Northrop crews were testing the two planes' radar equipment before delivering the planes back to the Air Force, engaging in what was called scissor interceptions, simulated all-weather interceptor attacks on each other, testing each other's radar. All three craft were flying under rules that limited their flight area to sparsely populated areas except for periods of takeoff and landing. The area that was roughly bounded by San Diego to the south, Santa Barbara to the northwest, and Bakersfield to the northeast was designated a local flying area.
Okay, so the necessary precautions were actually taken. It's not as if they just did the test without letting anyone know.
The sky was clear that day, with 50 miles visibility. So the pilots were operating under what is called visual flight rules. Under the rules, the pilot is responsible to see and avoid obstacles and other aircraft, but are generally not assigned routes or altitudes by air traffic control.
No way.
At about 11:18 a.m., one of the F-89s, piloted by 35-year-old Roland Owen, went into a wide turn at 25,000 feet altitude. As it completed the turn, it struck the left wing of the DC-7B, just 5 degrees off of a head-on collision. After accident investigation determined that the maximum possible time that either pilot may have had to see the other craft was about 15 seconds, and had they perceived and reacted early in that period, a crash may have been avoided. But because of the aircraft's speeds, altitude, and near head-on angle, seeing the other craft would have been unusually difficult. It was, according to the report, almost the most adverse conditions, insofar as the time opportunity.
It's a beautiful plane, by the way. Just admiring the color scheme. I like the chrome.
For the pilots to see and avoid is concerned. The F-89 burst into flames. The radio operator, 27-year-old Curtis Adams, was able to eject from the plane but suffered serious burns. His parachute had holes burned in it. He landed on the roof of a garage in Burbank, breaking his leg when he fell to the ground. Owen went down with the plane, which crashed in flames in Latuna Canyon, north of Burbank.
Oh no.
Some 8.5
So Owen died. Damn, man.
feet of the left wing of the DC-7B had been sheared off. Carr desperately tried to control the plane, but it began rolling left and dropped into an uncontrollable spinning dive. The Douglas Aircraft Tower in Santa Monica received the last radio message from co-pilot Archie Twitchell. Mid-air collision, we're going uncontrollable, we've had it, boy. And then, after a pause, say goodbye to everybody.
Oh my gosh.
The plane started disintegrating at between 1,000 and 500 feet altitude, something the Civil Aeronautics Board described as the result of air loads beyond the design or required strength of the airframe, spewing flaming debris across a 2-mile-wide swath of the California city of Pacoima. Carr, Twitchell, radio operator Roy Nakazawa, and flight engineer Waldo B. Adams all perished as the main fuselage crashed into the churchyard of Pacoima Congregational Church. A part of an engine smashed through the roof of the church auditorium, demolishing the building. 27-year-old Doris McLean was in the church office at the time with her 18-month-old daughter. She was quoted in the LA Times saying, "I thought the church was being bombed." Both she and her daughter escaped injury, but another church worker was injured. Next door, the pieces of the disintegrating DC-7 were raining down on the playground of the Pacoima Junior High School. The ninth graders were gathered in the school auditorium, practicing for their upcoming high school graduation. At first, the school official thought it was just a very loud sonic boom and tried to reassure the children.
And then when you go outside and you see a plane, a flaming plane plummeting from the sky, you're like, what the hell?
But the 7th and 8th graders, children between 12 and 14 years old, had just finished PE. The girls had gone inside, but around 200 boys were still on the playground, standing in line, waiting for the order to go inside. One report said that 25 boys were playing kickball at the time. Witnesses described the children as being transfixed by the sight of the crashing plane at first. But as it became clear that the plane was headed towards them, they scattered, running in all directions. According to the Civil Aeronautics Board, more than 140 people witnessed the crash, including Vernon Scott, a correspondent for the United Press. He described the scene. The wreckage is scattered all over the schoolyard. There are kids lying around. Others are being treated by medics. Parents rushed to the schoolyard trying to find their children, as did emergency responders.
Yeah, the panic, man. Imagine hearing your kid's school, a plane has basically crashed right next to it. You'd be like, oh my God, is my kid okay?
And news reporters. The Los Angeles Times reported that local physician Virgil P. Arkin sprinted from his office 2 blocks away to treat the injured. While there were many heroes helping to treat children and donating blood, Pacoima Police Chief William Parker reported that the scene became overwhelmed with as many as 30,000 people, mostly simply gawkers. 2 students, 13-year-old Ronnie Brand and 12-year-old Robert Zallen, were killed in the schoolyard by the flaming debris. When Ronnie Brand's mother found out about her son's death, she mourned, "I didn't even kiss him goodbye this morning." A 3rd student, 12-year-old Evan Elsner, was so severely injured that he died in the hospital the next day, taking the death toll from the accident to 8. The 4 crewmen of the DC-7B, the F-89 pilot Roland Owen, and the 3 boys on the ground. Newspaper reports from the time differ as to the exact number, but between 70 and 74 other boys were also injured, many of them severely. 23 were still in hospital.
Yeah, it sounds about right, because all of the debris, all of the flying debris, it's hot, it's metal.
Next day. Despite the nearly 2-mile-long debris field across the city of Pacoima, which demolished many houses, which people described as if they'd been struck by cannon fire, nobody else was killed. One student that was not injured was 15-year-old Richard Stevens Valenzuela. Better known by his stage name Richie Valens, he was absent from school that day, attending his grandfather's funeral. But so many of his friends were injured and killed that he was reportedly terrified of flying for the rest of his life, a fact that made his death in an airplane accident just 2 years later seem all the more tragic. The accident was represented as a dream sequence in the 1987 film La Bamba. Because of public outcry, the Civil Aeronautics Board restricted test flights to designated areas, usually over water. The CAB determined, however, that there was no practical alternative to visual flight rules, despite the fact that, under certain conditions of speed and angle of convergence, very little time opportunity exists for pilots to observe the other aircraft and take avoidance action. It seems strange that this accident is really only remembered because of its connection to another, more famous but less deadly accident. But the victims of the 1957 Pacoima, California mid-air collision deserve to be remembered. I'm the History Guy, and I hope you enjoyed this edition.
I just can't imagine, like, being a kid in school. I'm outside playing, with my classmates, and all of a sudden I see like a massive passenger airliner just falling from the sky, falling apart, everything's on fire. I'd think I was dreaming. It would be the most surreal thing ever. Rest in peace to those who died, because that's a tragic way to go. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.